Xi Jinping was born on June 15, 1953, in Beijing, during a time when China was still rebuilding itself after a brutal civil war. He was the son of Xi Jinping, a revolutionary hero, a founding father of the communist victory, and one of Mao Zedong's trusted lieutenants. As a child, Xi lived behind the heavily guarded walls of Zhongnanhai, China's most elite political compound, where decisions were made that shaped the destiny of the entire nation. He grew up surrounded by privilege, power, and ideology. For many, it was paradise. For a child, it was a quiet, rigid world. But in 1962, when Xi was just 9, everything changed.
His father, Xi Jinping, was suddenly accused of supporting anti-party literature.
It was a small political misstep, but in Mao's China, that meant exile. Overnight, the family fell from grace. Their home was raided, his father was imprisoned, and Xi Jinping became the son of a traitor. At school, his classmates turned on him. Teachers avoided him. Xi later said, "No one would talk to me. I didn't even understand what we had done wrong." In 1969, at the height of the Cultural Revolution, 15-year-old Xi Jinping was sent down to the countryside, part of Mao's campaign to humble urban youth and re-educate them through manual labor. His destination? Liangjiahe, a tiny village nestled in the rugged hills of Shanxi province. Liangjiahe was a place where time stood still. There were no lights, no running water, no books, only mud walls, dusty fields, and silence. Xi lived in a yaodong, a cave carved into the hillside, with a straw bed, rats in the corners, and winter winds that bit through every layer of clothing. For most city kids, it was hell. Many ran away, some killed themselves, but not Xi. He carried water from a frozen well, herded goats, cleaned toilets, and hauled manure. He ate plain millet. He bathed in the river. He stayed quiet, always listening, always observing. He tried to run once, back to Beijing, but was caught and sent back. That was when he began to change, harden, adapt. The villagers, skeptical at first, began to admire the boy who never gave up. They called him Xi the Black Egg, darkened by the sun, rough on the outside, tough inside. They elected him party branch secretary of the village. He was only 20. "I was rooted in the soil of China," Xi later said. "That experience made me who I am." Liangjiahe was his crucible. In that cave, Xi learned the most important lesson of his life. Power comes to those who endure. After 7 long years, Xi returned to the capital, not as a privileged son, but as a man forged by hardship. Yet the stigma of his family name lingered. The party still didn't trust him. He applied to join the Communist Party 9 times and was rejected again and again. But he didn't give up. On the 10th attempt, his perseverance was rewarded. In 1975, Xi was admitted to Tsinghua University, the training ground for China's political and scientific elite. He studied chemical engineering, but also took special classes in Marxist theory, political ideology, and statecraft, not out of curiosity, but out of strategy. While others partied or protested, Xi watched. He kept his head down and took notes. He didn't need to stand out, only to survive and move forward. After graduation, rather than stay in Beijing or take a cushy government post, Xi volunteered to serve in Hebei province, in one of China's poorest counties. It was a humble job, just a small village official, but a strategic beginning. Xi was laying bricks for a palace no one else could see. Over the next 3 decades, Xi Jinping rose slowly but steadily through the party's ranks, from Hebei to Fujian, Zhejiang, and finally Shanghai. Each move was calculated. In Fujian, he built ties with Taiwan-facing regions and promoted economic reforms. In Zhejiang, he became known for clean governance and pro-business policies. In Shanghai, a city riddled with political factions, Xi lasted only a few months, but left with a reputation for being neutral and effective. He didn't give fiery speeches. He didn't make enemies. He built alliances quietly, like a gardener planting seeds. His wife, Peng Liyuan, was already a famous soprano and a general in the People's Liberation Army. But Xi kept their relationship out of the spotlight. While others flaunted their wealth or lineage, Xi chose invisibility. By the time the party was looking for its next leader, Xi had what no one else did: a clean record, a loyal image, and no obvious enemies. When Xi Jinping emerged as the frontrunner for China's top job in 2012, many within the party thought they knew exactly what they were getting. Here was a man who spoke plainly, dressed modestly, and carried no known ideological baggage. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't radical, and he certainly didn't seem like the type to shake up the system. To the Western world, Xi looked like just another gray technocrat, someone who would quietly manage the country's rise, follow the script, and then step down after 10 years like his predecessors. But history has a habit of favoring those who stay silent longest. Behind that unassuming face was a man who had spent decades studying the structure of power, layer by layer. He had survived humiliation, exile, and political stigma. He had watched as other leaders stumbled because they moved too fast, talked too loud, or trusted too easily. Xi Jinping never forgot what the bottom felt like. So when he took over the highest office in the land as General Secretary of the Communist Party, President of China, and Chairman of the Central Military Commission, he did not step cautiously into the role. He seized it. In his very first public address as leader, Xi spoke of a dream, not of democracy, not of liberal reform, but of national rejuvenation. He called it the China Dream, and behind those words was a quiet thunder. It wasn't just about economic growth or lifting people out of poverty. It was about restoring China's place at the center of the world, where, in his view, it had always belonged before its century of humiliation. To achieve that, Xi knew he had to do something no leader had dared since Mao: reshape the party and bend it to his will. And so he began, not with laws, not with speeches, but with fear. The anti-corruption campaign was launched in early 2013, and almost instantly it became the largest political cleansing China had seen in generations. Xi declared war on the corrupt, and he did so with a phrase that became legend: "We must swat flies and hunt tigers." In Chinese political code, flies meant low-ranking bureaucrats, the kind who demanded bribes for permits, who skimmed off local projects, who preyed on the powerless. Tigers were something else entirely. They were generals, ministers, billionaires, men who had built empires inside the party, factions with their own networks, their own loyalty, their own rules. Within months, entire departments were disbanded. Military officials who once commanded nuclear forces were hauled into secret prisons. Even Zhou Yongkang, China's former security czar, once thought untouchable, was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. State TV broadcasted confessions. Luxury villas were raided. Airports were filled with whispers. Who's next? But this was never just about cleaning house. Xi was eliminating rivals. He was breaking the unwritten rules of factional balance that had kept the party stable since Deng Xiaoping. He rewrote the narrative. Corruption is the greatest threat to the party's survival. And who was the savior? Only one man. In 5 years, more than 1.5 million party officials were investigated or punished. The message was clear: no one was safe, except Xi. While the West debated privacy and civil liberties, Xi Jinping was busy constructing the most technologically advanced surveillance state the world had ever seen. The streets of China's cities were no longer just patrolled by police, but by algorithms. Every intersection had a camera. Every camera had facial recognition. Every movement, on the street, on a train, in a classroom, was watched, recorded, and stored. But Xi didn't stop there. He launched the social credit system, a sprawling network that assigned every citizen a score based on behavior, loyalty to the party, and even their spending habits. If your score dropped, you might not be able to book a plane ticket, or get a loan, or send your child to a good school. And it wasn't just about punishing the bad, it was about rewarding obedience. In Xinjiang, the surveillance was even more extreme. More than 1 million ethnic Uyghurs, a Muslim minority, were sent to re-education centers. The government called them vocational training camps. Human rights groups called them concentration camps. Inside, detainees were forced to renounce their faith, study Mandarin, memorize Xi's speeches, and sing patriotic songs. Outside, drones flew overhead. Phones were tracked. Families were split. Xi called it stability maintenance. The West called it genocide. But to Xi, none of that mattered. He saw China as fragile, a nation of 1.4 billion people balanced on a knife's edge. Stability wasn't just policy, it was the only way to survive. And surveillance was his shield. While consolidating power at home, Xi set his sights on the world stage. He didn't want China to simply grow rich. He wanted it to become unignorable, economically, militarily, and culturally. Enter the Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure plan that stretched from Asia to Africa to Europe. China began funding ports in Pakistan, highways in Kenya, railroads in Eastern Europe, and power plants in Central Asia. Billions of dollars flowed out. Roads were paved, bridges rose from nothing. To critics, it was debt trap diplomacy. To supporters, it was the Marshall Plan with Chinese characteristics. But Xi wasn't just building roads. He was building allegiances. He was creating a global order where Beijing, not Washington, would call the shots. At home, nationalism surged. State media praised Xi as the helmsman of the new era. Children recited his quotes in school. His face appeared on banners, books, apps, even dating websites. He had become more than a president. He was the party. He was the state. He was the dream itself. Then, in 2018, Xi Jinping did what no leader had dared to do since Mao. He abolished term limits. China's constitution had, since 1982, limited the presidency to 2 5-year terms, a quiet guardrail installed after Mao to prevent the return of dictatorship. Xi erased it. In a near-unanimous vote by the National People's Congress, over 2,900 delegates approved the change. Only 2 opposed it. And just like that, Xi Jinping could rule for life. Western media exploded with headlines. Xi becomes China's new emperor. Inside China, silence. The system had already been softened. The media was under control. The party, purged and restructured, wouldn't dare push back. For Xi, this wasn't ego, it was destiny. Looking back, Xi Jinping's journey defies almost every expectation. He was not the most brilliant student. He was not the most charismatic speaker. He was not a war hero, a poet, or a billionaire. He was something more dangerous, patient, unshakable, and utterly loyal to the only thing that ever gave him meaning, the party. He endured political disgrace. He shoveled manure in a mountain village. He watched friends fall from power, one by one. And now, he stands alone, atop a system he rebuilt in his image, feared by rivals, worshipped by followers. But behind the cameras, the slogans, and the red banners, one truth remains. He never forgot the cave. That cold, silent cave in the Yanjiahe, where power was nothing and survival was everything. That is where Xi Jinping was born, not in Beijing, but in the dirt.